Hey team, welcome back to another pod. Okay, so the other day, my friend and I was staying with her in Hong Kong and we were having a chat. And she was like to me, out of the blue, she was like, talking about a friend that was talking about had made a comment about being positive that day. And the question my friend asked me was, do you think that's like the right approach? Is it healthy to just have as positive, be like, oh yeah, positive thinking, that's the path forward? For somebody, especially who has got more of like maybe a pessimistic view or a little bit more jaded view of the world. And it got me thinking about this question, and I was trying to like articulate myself and respond to her, but I felt that I just wasn't able to articulate myself very well. And so I kind of went away and thought about it for a bit. Like I tried to talk to her about my opinion on it because I do have an opinion, but I wasn't able to really like pinpoint how I felt about it. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna like take this away and think about it, and a good place to kind of share this would be a podcast. So it's not that I feel that positive, it's not that I think positive thinking is the answer to all problems, because I think what I was trying to articulate to her is that it's not, but more so that what I was trying to say was like being a realist, but I don't think a realist is the right word for it. It's not being this hard-assed realist. It's more a sense of awareness about life and yourself. But anyway, all this to say is that I was then just on Instagram and I got shared this reel and I was like, you know what? That's literally what I was trying to say, more or less anyway. So this guy came up, he was a doctor, and he was talking about positive thinking versus accurate thinking. And I think it kind of summarized quite well what I was thinking. And so let me explain. I think for me, I've generally been a half glass full type of gal. I remember my mum said that to me when I was young. I honestly was like, yeah, mum. But I'm not going to lie, I actually didn't really understand what she was saying because I don't know, I just felt like I was a bit slow when I was younger, you know, just like living in my own universe, which I think actually really helped to my half glass full type of personality and view, because I lived in like my own land. I feel it was like Neya land. She's just main character energy, I would say. But I definitely had like a level of ignorance to me as I was growing up. Obviously I was like present in the world, but I don't feel like I don't know. It's not like I didn't have deep thoughts, but I didn't have like, I feel like I was never thinking too hard about things. I was just like living life. It sounds very strange, and I'm not trying to discredit myself. I actually think it was a really good thing for growing up to just like have less thoughts and just to like live daily. I'm not trying to discredit myself, but yeah, I was just like so carefree. But maybe it was like, you know, honestly, maybe that's a sign of good parenting that my parents just didn't really give me that much to have to worry about, in a sense. Anyway, just, I think I always just think it's really funny, like myself, when I think about myself when I was younger, because I was just so like chill. But anyway, I was a half glass full gal. I feel like this is something that was very consistent in my life all throughout, I think up until my like formative years and becoming an adult. Obviously I experienced like more things which made me more aware of like the half glass empty kind of notion. But I do think it's more or less stuck with me throughout those years. And I think I used to think, well, I mean, honestly, because being a half glass full kind of gal came naturally, I didn't really think about this notion of like, oh, people are thinking quite negatively about things, or like someone's like being quite a pessimist about something. I didn't really realize that until I interacted with more people, especially like in a working environment, or as I got older. I think you get exposed to all different characters, and then you're like, oh, I understand. Like this is how you think. This is how they think, which is very insightful, and it's a good learning experience. So I used to think that I guess like people just branded me with like, oh, you're quite positive. So I was like, oh yeah, I guess I have like positive thinking. But actually I think that's not what I believe in, all the way I think at all. I think positive thinking is, well, I do also think people are being harsh about positive thinking. I think it's like developed into this space of like people trying to like push positivity down someone's throat so aggressively to be like, think positively and everything will be fine, life will be fine, nothing bad's going to happen to you, like, and kind of covering everything up with like an element of positivity, which I don't think is the right way to go about it. I think it's like a view you can have, but I think when you use thinking in that way, you're actually not like preparing yourself in any way for when things do go bad. Because when things go bad, I think it'd be even more catastrophic to you if you're always like pushing this like positive thinking, rainbows and butterflies energy. So I do think positive thinking in that way is an illusion of sorts, because it's not sustainable as a way forward. If you're not equipping yourself with the skills to understand like what is going on, why is it happening, and then like how to deal with it, then you're really just setting yourself up for failure. Because at some point in your life, whether it's big or small, you're going to be faced with inconveniences, and that's going to be something that you have to learn how to deal with and move on from. So I think that positive thinking in this lens is definitely like a sweep it under the rug and, you know, hope for a different outcome next time, which is not, I mean, how do you expect a different outcome from something if you don't actually change your approach to something, or you try to at least influence a different outcome to the situation? So anyway, that's all to say that positive thinking is not what I'm pushing here or what I believe in. What I actually more believe in is what this doctor in this video that I was talking to you about dubbed as accurate thinking. And so accurate thinking, from my interpretation and understanding of what he was describing, and I think this is like also my interpretation, my interpretation of what I believe in, is that accurate thinking is actually understanding and acknowledging the situation that you're in and like what's actually happening, not some like jaded or positive view of it, and then understanding why it's happening and what you can control. I think that's definitely the way I think when something happens to me. I'm like, okay, why is this happening? Okay, looking at the situation, what can I control? In most cases, it's just myself. Okay, so then, you know, in the scheme of things, is this that bad? What can I do to respond or resolve or like move forward from the situation? They're like the big questions that I ask myself. So I think focusing on what you can control and putting your energy into those things is like a approach for me of positive thinking. It's being able to have the awareness and acknowledge that something is not going well, something is not going to plan for you, and then understanding the why. Because bad things are always going to happen throughout your week, people, your week or day, and it's really understanding like how you can influence that situation, or and like where you're just like stuck and where you're not able to influence that area, and then not getting caught up in the parts that you can't influence. And then as I was like researching and kind of like thinking more about this topic, I ran into another video from a lady, and she is a researcher at UC Davis, and she was talking about, I think it was a TED talk, and her video was about why people get stuck in negative thinking and then like how to get unstuck. And she had done a few different research groups where she was testing like why people think in a loss framework, and that was quite interesting because so essentially she was taking like the half glass full, half glass empty view, and she was saying when you're a half glass full person, you're taking the lens you're looking through is a gain lens, and then when you're a half glass empty, it's a loss lens. And I think a lot more people nowadays are definitely in the loss lens. And she was saying how it's so much easier when they were doing that research, they recognized it was so much easier for people to have something bad happen to them and then for them to sit in that. And people would sit in that and then not know how to get themselves out of that negative space. Because I think their conclusions were essentially that like a loss mentality is so much harder to get yourself out of than going from a positive mentality to a loss and then coming back out of that. And so it made me think about what is the best way to balance the positive and negative, because I think there are going to be times in your life where you ebb and flow, like you're going to be in the highest of highs and then you're going to stoop to the lowest of lows. And it's really understanding, like, I think for me, I was thinking further about this and thinking, maybe it's not so black and white and clear cut of like, oh, it's positive or it's negative. Why can't we just like sit in the middle, and instead of having to bucket ourselves or throw ourselves into one of those two, I guess, feelings or perspectives, why can't we sit in this space of, I'm just this like straight flat line in the middle, and positive and negative is like influences into that environment. That's what might happen throughout your day or your week or your life. But it's knowing that constant of what is actually happening is knowing what actually is happening and sitting in that, existing in that, I feel like is I guess the real life and real time of what's actually happening in your life. I don't know if that's making sense, but let me explain to you. So I think it's like, how to say? I think it's knowing that, okay, I'm here today. I'm going to go to this party. The reality is I can control myself. I'm going to go to this party, and I don't know if it's going to be good or bad. I might have a bit of anxiety about whether or not I'm going to make friends or like who's there, blah, 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 normal anxieties. But I get there, and the factors of that influence, whether it's a positive experience at this party or a negative, is external, and what I can control is myself. So I actually have a choice to decide here, okay, I'm at this party and I can choose to have a good time, or I can choose to just go home. But the factors of whether it's a positive or negative experience is definitely external, beyond yourself. There are factors of positive and negative that you can control yourself, of like how you show up. But the external factors that influence that timeline or your real time is something that isn't in your control, I would say. Like someone might vomit on you, someone might push you into a pool. All factors that are not you executing them. But what you can control is how you respond to that, or how aware you are to your environment to see that coming. I don't know if that's making sense, but let me just move on to like another space. Maybe it'll help define it a bit better. So I think an area that people came up to me for my podcast was from my... Okay, let me move on to another example that might make this more clear. So my first podcast that I had for this podcast was called How to Survive Friendship. And I was talking about friendships and just like how I approach friendships and survive like the idea of friendships and maintain friendships and that. All of that. Anyway, people took it as quite a negative podcast, and like people were like to me, oh my God, like who hurt you? What happened? I feel so bad. And I was like, oh, I don't love that people are viewing this in like a negative view, but actually the podcast was definitely more like about, this is the reality. Like this is like, I feel like that was a good demonstration of my thinking. It was like, this is the reality. This is you're constant. You can show up how you want to show up as a friend, and that's your real time, right? That's your flat line. The positive and negative of like those friends and what you experience with them is really dependent on those people and how they behave in your friendship. The flat line should be pretty consistent because you can control who you are and how you behave in those situations. But yeah, what I was trying to say is that people are going to treat you in different ways. They might surprise you, they might really disappoint you, and you will need to interpret that. And I think for me, what I was trying to say in that podcast was, okay, as long as they're small things, like, cool, that person's always really late. Adjust my expectation. I'm going to rock up late as well. That person, like, always will talk about themselves. Okay, I will just expect that of that person, and I will be a listener. So I think that's the view of this accurate thinking. It's like, that's your true reality. That's what's happening. Why not respond in real time to that? All that to say, like, if someone is treating you really badly, though, like, don't accept that. There are boundaries, and there are, like, everyone has boundaries, which is good, and you should know what your boundaries are and then act within that. Yes. So yeah, all of this is in view of smaller disturbances throughout, like, friendships. But obviously there are larger things that happen in life generally that are really bad and definitely warrant a negative thinking space and some sitting time in the sad pit. But I think once you've built this skill of being able to compartmentalize your feelings from reality, it makes it easier to manage and to know, like, this is what your constant is. And yeah, this is really crap right now. I'm in a low place, but I know how to get myself back out of that. I think that's the space that is good to coast in. Like, it's good to know that you can have those positive and negative moments, but they're external. They're not you fundamentally as a baseline, and don't define you as a person every day. So I guess the question is really, how do we train our minds to think differently? Or can we train our minds to think differently? Yes, it's been proven many times before. You can definitely train your mind to think differently. And even you're training your mind to think from, like, being overly positive to being more, I guess accurate thinking is an adjustment. Accepting and allowing yourself to have some sort of negative thought, and to know that that's human and normal is fine. I think it's being able to recognize and find that happy medium that you can coast in as a human, to be aware of what your surroundings are, aware of how you feel, aware of what you can control, aware of what's really happening and what's not happening, and then being able to choose and dictate whether or not you're accepting that positive or negative feeling or emotion that you could have. I think it just takes time to allow yourself to learn not to be so reactive, and really just think about your situation. I think it's so easy sometimes to be reactive, especially when you're like, I think you spiral into this feeling of being super emotional. I've done it before. And you're just thinking, everything's spiraling out of control, and you're letting your emotions drive how you think, and then you act on that. That is the dangerous place, and when you're being reactive. But if you can allow yourself to feel how you're feeling, but choose to not act on it, but just let yourself feel, I think you can allow yourself the space after a while to open up and think about, why am I feeling this way? What triggered it? What happened? Who was involved? What actions did I take that caused this? Then you can really break it down and think about what areas you can control and you can't. What areas are real, what are not. What is truth, what is fact, and what is an illusion in your mind or an assumption of a situation. So I think the ability to do that and extract yourself from the situation will allow yourself to think accurately. And it's not that positive thinking is a bad thing. It's just that I think you don't need to view it as positive or negative. You just need to view it as accurate, which is, this is my life, this is what's happening to me in real time, and then assess your feelings after that. Anyway, I hope this podcast made sense to you. I am a bit tired, so I feel like I kind of wasn't articulating that well what I was thinking. So sorry about that. I will go and take a nap now because I'm gassed, bro. Ciao. Ciao, Bella. See you in the next pod.